Along the way, you've heard my name, and you have an interesting story to tell about a certain major, I said, starting the ball. Simon blinked, then he fully smiled. You don't waste time, do you? Not really. Why don't you pick up where you left off on the way here? You said you were taken to the hills when the upheaval started, I supplied. Right. I had spent a bunch of time up in the mountains around the Tahoe area, and I figured maybe with the terrain, the plague hadn't hit so hard. Well, I got to Tahoe all right, but one look around had me running for the hills again. Seems like a lot of people had the same idea, and one of them was infected. The whole slaughter had started again, and I barely managed to escape the zombies by climbing the expert slope on Heavenly. The zombies weren't great climbers, and I got ahead of them pretty quickly. Last I looked, there were dozens of people trying to escape the undead by swimming out into the lake. Trouble is, the lake is cold. I'm sure most died of hypothermia while the ghouls waited at the edge. On top of Heavenly is a lodge, and I stayed there for a time while the world died around me. The place had been abandoned, and I was able to break into their food stores and live for nearly 6 months. By that time, the weather was turning, and it was getting pretty cold at night, so I started to venture out. The first person I encountered was a zombie, but it was cold enough that he couldn't chase me and was moving so slow that I was able to take a large branch and knock him down the mountain. By the time he reached the bottom, he was in about 6 pieces. I smiled at the description and imagined a Z cartwheeling down the mountainside with limbs flying off and leaving a grisly trail of smashed-up zombie chunks. Simon continued. About the time my food ran out, winter was starting to hit the mountains pretty hard. I figured I needed to move on and do it quickly before the passes were closed. I took one of the maintenance trucks that had been left up at the resort and started my way down the mountain. I was hoping to get into Carson Valley and maybe find a decent place to hole up for the winter. There wasn't a large population in that area, and I thought that I could winter there and then move on. On the way down the mountain, I passed several cars that had reanimated people inside them, and more than one family car was covered in blood as a sick family member came back and ate his relatives. Carson Valley was relatively untouched by the virus, and I spent the winter with a couple who had been living there for a while. They had been monitoring the progress of the disease by the internet. We spent countless hours going over plans and preparations. When winter broke, I planned on heading north to the rough country, then maybe going to Colorado. I had heard the military had made a stand there and were welcoming survivors. Rumors told me there were almost 100,000 people in the mountain, and the military was going to start heading back out to take on the threat. I paid close attention at this point because it coincided with information I had found at State Center Bravo in what seemed a long time ago. I killed my next 2 zombies that winter. The couple I was rooming with, yeah, they went out to their neighbor's ranch and came back with a sickness. The virus took them both out in a short time, and they came from me. I killed the woman with a shovel and beat her husband's brains in with a length of fence post. They were good people. Simon drifted off for a second at the memory, but recovered quickly. I took what I needed from the house and left that evening. I drove through the night, and when I ran out of gas the next morning, I figured I was in Colorado. That's when the Major's men caught up to me. Charlie and I shifted at the mention of the Major. Who is the Major? Is he the commander of the remainder of the military forces? Charlie asked. Simon's eyes got dark. No, he isn't. I found out later that the military was wiped out completely, that there are 100,000 ghouls trapped in a mountain in Wyoming, just waiting for some fool to let them out. No, the Major is just some guy who likes to be called Major, and he runs his little operation like a military base, although neither he nor his men have any military experience. But that doesn't stop him from acting like it or using it to dupe people into believing he's the sole authority left in the United States. That was interesting. I ruminated on the possibilities, and if a group could pull it off, they could effectively take over a good portion of the country. Simon continued. From the beginning, I knew something was wrong. Men and women worked the field.